The alarms blare across the command deck of the Zifrin Dominion's border station. Crimson warning lights pulse in rhythm with the urgent wails of the defense system. Admiral Vroth, a seasoned veteran of the Dominion's Navy, narrowed his slit-pupiled eyes as he read the incoming data stream. Unknown human vessel detected. Unauthorized entry into restricted space. Designation, battleship class. Configuration, unknown. A chill settled over the bridge. Humanity, they were primitive compared to the Dominion, barely scratching the surface of deep space travel. The last known human warships were outdated, sluggish things, more useful for policing their own system than posing a threat to an empire spanning hundreds of light years. Yet here it was, a single warship the size of a dreadnought, moving with impossible precision to the asteroid fields that marked the Dominion's outer borders. It should have been torn apart. No known human ship had the maneuvering thrusters necessary for such a feat. Vroth leaned forward, his mandibles clicking in irritation. "Open channel," he ordered. A subordinate complied, and static filled the speakers. Then a voice, clear, cold, human. "This is the UNS Revenant. You are advised to disengage all weapon systems and allow passage." The bridge fell silent. A human ship issuing commands to the Dominion? The arrogance! Vroth snarled. "Human vessel, you are in violation of Dominion space. Power down immediately, or you'll be destroyed." There was a pause, then the voice returned, still calm. "If you could destroy us, Admiral, you would have already." The ship continued its approach, undeterred. Vroth's claws curled into the armrests of his command chair. Target their engines. Disable them if they refuse to comply. Obliterate them. His officers obeyed, and the station's turrets locked onto the unknown battleship. But the instant they fired, something impossible happened. The Revenant blinked, not warped, not accelerated. It vanished and reappeared several kilometers closer in an instant, as if reality itself had bent to its will. The incoming plasma bolts passed harmlessly through the empty space where it had once been. Gasps filled the bridge. No Dominion ship had that kind of technology. Not even the core world fleets possessed instantaneous movement. Then a new alarm blared, a boarding signature. Vroth turned just in time to see his security officers collapse, their bodies crumpling under the weight of unseen force. The air shimmered, and then the humans appeared. They weren't wearing any visible armor, but their forms were covered in sleek, dark plating that pulsed with unnatural energy. Their faces were hidden behind smooth, reflective visors. One of them, the tallest, stepped forward. A simple gesture, and the station's weapon system shut down. "You have something we need," the figure said. Vroth bared his teeth. "Were you?" The human tilted their head slightly. The future? Vroth's mind raced. This was impossible. Humanity was supposed to be behind the Dominion in technology, yet here they were, standing on his bridge, shutting down his weapons, rendering his forces useless. The human in dark plating took another step forward. Even without a visible weapon, something about them radiated power, not brute strength, but the quiet, unshakable confidence of a predator in a room full of prey. Vroth's claws twitched toward the emergency override panel on his command chair, a last resort protocol. If he could activate it, he could purge the bridge with plasma, incinerating everyone inside, including himself if necessary. The human's visor shifted, not physically, but something in it pulsed, as if they could see his thoughts. "You're considering self-destruction," the human said smoothly. "That won't work." Vroth snarled, baring his fangs. "You think I fear death, human?" The figure remained still. Then, with a mere flick of their wrist, the lights in the command center dimmed, and every control panel in the room rewrote itself. Dominion symbols flickered and changed, text lines converting into strange, unknown code before stabilizing into something Vroth had never seen before. The entire station had been hacked. Impossible. "You don't fear death," the human agreed, "but your empire does." Vroth's throat tightened. He forced himself to stand tall. You are one ship, one battleship. No matter what trickery you possess, you cannot stand against the full might of the Dominion. The human was silent for a moment. Then they turned slightly, raising a hand to their helmet. Proceed. From the station's external cameras, the crew saw them. Dozens of blinding rifts tore open across the void. Not warps, not hyperdrives. Something else entirely. And from them emerged more human vessels, sleek, black, moving without the clunky thrusters of lesser ships. Silent, perfectly aligned. Each one was bigger than the last. The bridge officers went pale. This, one of Rotha's subordinates whispered, voice shaking. This wasn't a scouting ship. It was a warning. Rotha's blood ran cold. The Revenant had entered Dominion space alone, and the Dominion had dared to challenge it. Now humanity had responded. The human leader took a step closer to Roth, their voice barely above a whisper. You wanted to see what we were capable of, Admiral. Now you will. And with that, the war began. The silence that followed was heavier than any gravity well Roth had ever encountered. Every officer on the bridge, every soldier, every technician, each of them sat frozen as their screens displayed the impossible. The human fleet had arrived, not just a few ships, hundreds, and these were not the crude, outdated vessels the Dominion had classified as low threat. These were something else. Their hulls gleamed with a blackness that devoured the starlight around them, absorbing sensor pings as if they refused to be read. No drive signatures, no visible weapons, and yet they moved with purpose, not like ships blindly following orders, but like predators closing in for the kill. Roth felt his mandibles tighten. This was not a battle. This was an execution. A lieutenant at the control station suddenly cried out, her scaled hands shaking over the terminal. Admiral, they're inside our network. Our defenses are shutting down. Roth turned sharply. Impossible. We run a closed system. Human technology shouldn't even be capable of interfacing with. The lights flickered again. Then, in perfect unison, every turret missile battery and shield generator in the sector powered down. An eerie, absolute silence followed. Roth clenched his fists. How? The human leader on his bridge tilted their head, observing him. Their expression was still unreadable behind that gleaming visor, but their body language was relaxed, almost bored. Your systems were child's play, the human said simply. You built your empire on brute force. We built ours on understanding the very fabric of reality. Roth snarled, stepping forward. You think you can intimidate me, human? I have commanded Dominion fleets for decades. I have burned worlds that refuse to kneel. I have annihilated entire species for defying the Dominion. And you think I will kneel to you? The human was quiet for a moment. Then they stepped forward too, slowly, deliberately. Roth expected a weapon, a threat, a display of power. Instead, the human simply said, You misunderstand. We're not here for you to kneel. We're here to ensure you don't get back up. The words hit like a plasma blast. Rotha's subordinates exchanged looks, fear crawling up their spines. Even the most battle-hardened among them knew this was different. Then the human raised a hand to their helmet again. Proceed. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Dominion's fleet exploded. Not from human weapons, not from enemy fire. They detonated from within. Roth watched horrified as the massive Dominion dreadnoughts in high orbit around the station burst into fiery ruins, their hulls splitting apart like they'd been unmade at a molecular level. What have you done? He whispered. The human didn't answer right away. They turned, glancing at the display screen that showed the destruction outside. Then they said, Your mistake wasn't letting us enter your space. Your mistake was assuming we weren't already here. The realization hit Roth like a hammer to the skull. They hadn't just hacked the station. They had infiltrated the Dominion's entire fleet. This had been planned. Not a battle, an extermination. Rotha's claws trembled. He had fought in countless wars, crushed resistance movements, outmaneuvered rivals, But never had he faced an enemy that fought like this. "How long?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The human turned back to face him. "We have been inside your networks for years, learning, watching, preparing." Roth felt sick. The Dominion's military prided itself on strength, on control, and yet the humans had slipped beneath their defenses without a single shot fired. Until now. "You can't win," Roth growled, clinging to the last shreds of his pride. "The Dominion controls thousands of worlds." "We?" "Not anymore," the human interrupted. They gestured the screens where Dominion worlds, entire planets, were going dark one by one, each losing power, each surrendering before a single human ship had even arrived. "Your people are smart," the human continued. "Smarter than your leaders. They're choosing surrender because they know fighting us is suicide." Roth staggered back, gripping his chair. His empire was crumbling in real time. The human leader tilted their head again, studying him. Then they finally drew a weapon, a small, sleek, glowing device that fit into the palm of their hand. Not a gun. Something else. "You, however," the human said, voice filled with something resembling pity, "don't get the luxury of surrender." And with a simple press of a button, the bridge filled with light. Pain. For the first time in decades, Admiral Roth felt true pain. It wasn't the sharp agony of a blade or the searing burn of plasma. It was something deeper, something that crawled into his very being and shredded his mind apart, one thought at a time. His vision fractured, his body convulsed, and his consciousness wavered. It felt like every nerve in his body was being rewritten, every muscle forced into submission by an unseen force. His thoughts scattered like dust in a solar storm. And then it stopped. Roth collapsed onto the deck, his breath ragged. The weight of whatever had invaded him receded, but the sensation lingered, like his mind had been touched by something beyond his comprehension. He forced himself to look up. The human leader still stood there, calm, unreadable behind their visor. Their small device, whatever it had been, was now inactive, though the air around it still crackled. Roth tried to speak, but his throat refused to obey. His limbs trembled. His body felt wrong. What have you done?" he rasped, barely recognizing his own voice. The human tilted their head slightly, as if contemplating whether or not to answer. Then, with the same eerie calm, they said, "We unmade your chains." Roth bared his teeth. You think you've broken me? I am Dominion. I do not break." The human didn't react to the outburst. They simply gestured at the surrounding officers, Vrata's own people, who stood frozen, watching the exchange in stunned silence. "Do you feel it?" the human asked, addressing the bridge crew. Now, the absence. Roth frowned, but then he saw it in their faces. The hesitation, the confusion, the fear. One of the officers, a younger lieutenant, stumbled backward, clawed hands clutching at his temples. His breathing was erratic, his pupils dilated. "It's gone," he whispered. I don't understand. I don't feel it anymore." Vrata's mind reeled. The human took a slow step forward. "Your empire was built on more than just fear, Admiral. It was built on control, mental control. Your rulers bound every officer, every soldier, every citizen into the Dominion's will. That's why your people never rebelled. That's why your troops fought to the death without question." Vrata's blood ran cold. How did they know? No outsider had ever understood the Dominion's true grip on power. Their empire wasn't just held together by force. It was enforced through centuries of carefully engineered neural conditioning. Every officer, every citizen was linked to the Dominion's will. It wasn't mind control, not exactly, but a constant, unshakable presence in their thoughts. A pressure, a guiding force, the will of the Dominion itself. And now, Roth reached into his mind, searching, desperate for that presence. But he found nothing, a gaping void where it should have been. Panic set in. His claws scraped against the cold metal floor. He tried to force himself to stand, but his body felt disconnected, as if he no longer knew how to function without that guiding force. You. Vrotha's voice was a low snarl, but it lacked its usual power. You severed us. The human nodded once. Yes. The bridge officers staggered, realization dawning across their faces. Without the Dominion's mental grip, without the chains that had bound their thoughts since birth, they were free, and it terrified them. No, one of them whispered. No, this is wrong. I don't know what to do. Vroth watched in horror as officers, began to crumble. Some clutched their heads, overwhelmed by the sudden silence in their minds. Others backed away from their stations, as if the very idea of acting on their own free will was too much to bear. The Dominion had not raised leaders. It had raised servants. Without orders, without the constant guiding force, they were directionless. The Dominion didn't rule by strength. It ruled by enslavement. And the humans had just torn it all away. Vroth forced himself to his feet, rage burning through his veins. You think this makes you victorious. His voice was raw, venomous. You think you won because you cut our leashes? The human remained unmoved. You have doomed them, Vroth spat, gesturing toward his faltering officers. They are not like you. They were made to serve. They will break without the Dominion's guidance. The human finally moved. They stepped closer, too close, until Vroth could feel the unnatural presence radiating from them. Then, in a voice that was almost gentle, the human said, "Then let them break." Vrotha's breath caught. "Let them break," the human continued. "Let them shatter. Let them fall apart, piece by piece. Because only when something breaks can it be rebuilt into something stronger." Vrotha's fist clenched, claws scraping against his own palms. His empire, his entire empire, was collapsing around him. And these humans, these creatures who had once been dismissed as insignificant, had brought it all down without ever firing a single real shot. "You are monsters," Vroth whispered. The humans simply turned away. "No," they said, "we are free." And then the command deck doors slid open, revealing more of them. More humans in those impossible suits, walking with the kind of certainty only a conqueror could possess. Vroth knew in that moment that the Dominion was finished, and humanity had won. Vroth stood in the wreckage of his own existence. His empire, once a monolith of control and dominance, was crumbling before his eyes. The bridge of his command station, once a symbol of authority, had become nothing more than a prison. The human leader had turned their back on him, their attention now on their soldiers. They spoke in their strange, clipped language of fish and calm, as if this wasn't the single most devastating moment in galactic history. Vroth swallowed his fury. His entire body trembled, but he forced himself upright, straightened his posture, and faced the enemy. "If you believe you can break the Dominion with a single act," he snarled, "then you are fools." The human didn't turn back immediately. Instead, they adjusted something on their wrists, their visor reflecting the pale red emergency lights still flickering around the room. Finally, they spoke. "We never planned to break the Dominion in a single act, Admiral." The air shifted. A deep hum, so low it was almost imperceptible, pulsed through the station. It wasn't from the Dominion systems. Those had long been hijacked. This was something else, something deeper, something that vibrated in the very core of the structure itself. Vrotha's claws twitched. What then? The holograms activated. Every screen, every display, every single transmission node in the entire station shifted, broadcasting something new, something the entire Dominion would see. The truth. Vrotha's own face appeared on the monitors, but it wasn't the version the Dominion had shown its people. It was raw, unfiltered. Next to it, footage from hidden Dominion archives flashed, images of the atrocities his empire had committed. Worlds razed, species enslaved, populations culled because they were deemed inefficient. Vrotha's own voice played, pulled from classified logs. "They are tools, nothing more. A strong empire does not ask permission. It takes. Fear is the key to obedience. Without it, we are nothing. The bridge crew staggered as they saw the truth, their truth, displayed for the first time without Dominion censorship. And it wasn't just here. Through the massive viewport, Vroth saw flickers of distress signals lighting up Dominion-controlled space. Transmission towers, civilian hubs, entire fleets were receiving this data in real time. It wasn't a military assault. It wasn't an invasion. It was revelation. The human leader finally turned to Vroth, their stance relaxed, confident. Your empire is not dying because of us, Admiral. It's dying because it was built on a lie. Vroth could barely breathe. The Dominion's greatest weapon had always been its control over information. It shaped reality, dictated history, erased anything that didn't serve its narrative. The people, his people, had never questioned it because they had never known another reality. Until now, the entire galaxy had seen, and there was no coming back from it. You! Vrotha's voice cracked, his throat dry. He turned to the screens, where panic was spreading like wildfire. Entire colonies were revolting. Military officials were defecting. A system that had held for thousands of years was unraveling in mere moments. How? He barely recognized his own voice. How did you get this data? The human tilted their head, as if the answer was obvious. You stored it. Vrotha's heart stopped. You kept records of every atrocity. The human continued. Every crime, every massacre, every shadow war. You archived them in hidden servers, buried them beneath layers of security, convinced that if the truth was locked away, it could never be used against you. They leaned in slightly. But humans, we are very good at digging up the past. Vroth felt his world end. The bridge crew, those who had once followed him without question, looked at him now with horror, disgust. And then the real nightmare began. Incoming signals flooded the station's channels, not just from Dominion territories, but from other galactic powers. The Dominion had many enemies, races and civilizations that had been too afraid to challenge its might. But now they saw a wounded beast, a dying beast. The distress calls were not coming from Dominion forces. They were coming from the worlds the Dominion had once ruled, from generals turning on their masters, from civilians rising up against their overlords. The humans hadn't just attacked a military installation. They had shattered an empire soul, and there was no stopping what came next. Vrotha's claws clenched into fists. He should have attacked, ripped the human's throat out, fought to his last breath. That's what a true Dominion warrior would have done, but he didn't, because for the first time in his life, he had no orders, no voice guiding him, no empire to hold him, no future he could see. He was alone, and that, more than anything, was what truly broke him. The human leader took one last glance at the chaos they had unleashed. Then they turned away. Your people will decide what happens next, they said. Not you. And with that, they left. The doors slid shut behind them, and Admiral Vroth, once one of the most powerful beings in the Dominion, was left standing in the ruins of everything he had ever known. Alone. Vroth did not move. He stood frozen, his claws twitching at his sides, his mind an endless void of static. The command bridge was silent too, silent except for the quiet hum of failing Dominion systems. His officers still stood at their stations, but none of them looked at him. They were watching the screens, watching their empire collapse. A voice finally broke the silence. What do we do now? It was a young lieutenant, the one who had first realized the Dominion's grip on their minds had been severed. He looked lost, his eyes darting between the broken displays, his claws gripping the console as if it could somehow hold him together. Vroth had no answer. For the first time in his life, he had no answer. Before today, he had always known his purpose. Follow orders. Enforce the Dominion's will. Crush resistance. Expand. Rule. Repeat. Now there was nothing. The human had been right. The Dominion had not raised leaders. It had not raised warriors. It had raised servants, beings bred to obey, to never question, to exist only as extensions of an empire that no longer existed. Another officer spoke. "Admiral, if the Dominion is truly—" He hesitated. The words felt wrong in his mouth, as if admitting them would make them real. "If the Dominion is truly gone, what do we do?" Roth turned slowly, his mandibles clicking together in frustration. The words caught in his throat. He wanted to say something. Anything to reassert control, to command, to take back the certainty that had been stripped from him. But what could he command? His fleet was destroyed. His empire was in flames. His people were fractured beyond repair. And worst of all, they were free. Roth's claws dug into his palm. Freedom. He had always seen it as a weakness, a disease that lesser species clung to in the absence of true strength. The Dominion had been great because it had stripped freedom away, replacing it with order. And yet, in its absence, his people were crumbling. Another officer stepped forward, his voice raw with desperation. "Admiral, we need orders." Roth's fists clenched. Orders. For so long, that was all any of them had known. They had never been taught how to think beyond the will of the Dominion, and now that was gone. The bridge officers, all hardened warriors, all once unwavering in their duty, now looked at him like frightened children, because they had never been allowed to grow, and the humans had known that was their true weapon, not just technology, not just warfare, understanding. They had understood the Dominion in ways even its own rulers had not. They had known that the empire was not held together by firepower, but by fear and dependence. And so they had not fought the Dominion. They had removed its crutch. And now, Roth staggered back, breathing hard, his vision blurred, his heart pounded, not in battle rage, but in something worse, something he had never felt before. Panic. The great Admiral Roth, was afraid. The realization hit him like a plasma strike. He was afraid, not of death, not of war, but the unknown, of a universe where he had no purpose. "Admiral," the lieutenant pressed, "what are your orders?" Roth's gaze flickered to the screens again. The Dominion's central command was gone. The core worlds were falling into rebellion. The human fleet had left. They had left because they didn't need to fight anymore. The Dominion had already lost. Roth inhaled sharply. His next words came slowly, uncertainly, like they had never been spoken in the history of his kind. I don't know." A silence fell over the bridge. A heavy, soul-crushing silence. No one spoke. No one moved, because none of them knew either. For the first time, the Dominion, once the most feared force in the galaxy, was directionless. A fleet without a master, a people without a purpose. And Roth, standing in the ruins of it all, realized a terrible, undeniable truth. The humans had not just destroyed the Dominion. They had forced it to become something new. And whether or not that was a mercy or a curse, only time would tell. Roth stood motionless, staring at the holographic displays flickering around him. The weight of his existence pressed down on him in ways he had never experienced before. For the first time, there were no orders, no directives, no purpose. The Dominion had always told its warriors what to do, who to kill, who to conquer, who to fear. But now, with the Dominion crumbling, its guiding force gone, he and his officers stood like children abandoned in the storm, lost and without direction. The thought made his stomach twist. All around the command bridge, officers murmured to themselves, their voices hollow and uncertain. Some stared blankly at the displays, watching as entire worlds turned against their former masters. Others clutched at their own heads, struggling to process the sudden emptiness in their minds. And beyond this station, chaos across the Dominion's vast empire. Planetary governors were falling one by one, unable to command without the absolute control they had relied on for centuries. Military outposts were surrendering without a single battle, their soldiers too paralyzed by the loss of their mental conditioning to resist. The once mighty Dominion fleet had fractured overnight. Some ships were fleeing, others were turning on each other. And the humans, they were gone. They had done what they came to do. They had not occupied the Dominion's worlds. They had not declared themselves rulers. They had not planted their flags or claimed territory. Instead, they had lit a fire and walked away. And now Vroth and the remnants of the Dominion had been left to burn. He forced his trembling claws into fists. No, this was not how it would end. He would not let it. The Dominion had survived wars, insurrections, assassinations. This was just another test. "We are not broken," he growled under his breath. The words felt weak, hollow, because the truth was far worse. They were broken. The entire Dominion was. And for the first time, there was no enemy to fight, only themselves. A sharp breath to his right caught his attention. One of his officers, Commander Yelks, was staring at him with wild, desperate eyes. "Admiral, what do we do?" Vroth hesitated. What did they do? Every instinct in his body screamed for him to fight, to reclaim order, to strike back at the humans and restore the Dominion's strength. But how? With what? The humans had shattered more than an empire. They had shattered belief, the very foundation of what the Dominion had always been. Could it be rebuilt? Would it ever be the same? No. Even if they clawed their way back from this disaster, it would never be the same. He took a slow breath, steadying himself. His vision was dark, clouded with the weight of defeat. But he had not survived this long by surrendering to despair. He straightened his posture, forced his voice into something strong, something unyielding. "We regroup." The officers looked at him with uncertainty, waiting for more. Vroth clenched his fists. "The Dominion is changing," he admitted, the words bitter on his tongue. "We do not have control over that. But what we do have control over is ourselves. We will not sit here like weaklings waiting to be picked apart by scavengers." He gestured towards the collapsing images of Dominion-controlled space. "This will be a time of war, not against the humans, but against ourselves." Silence. Some of the officers looked horrified. Others simply seemed numb. Finally, Yeltrick swallowed hard. "You mean civil war?" Vroth nodded grimly. "What else did you expect?" He gestured to chaos unfolding across the stars. Every Dominion warlord who still holds power will try to claim the throne. Worlds will resist. Sectors will fracture. The Dominion is bleeding, and the only thing left to decide is who will survive the carnage. His words hung heavy in the air. Slowly, the officers began to straighten their backs. The fear didn't leave their faces, but something else flickered there now. Something old, something familiar. They had lost the Dominion as they had known it, but they had not lost their instincts. Vroth could feel the shift in the air. The weak would die, the strong would rise, and the Dominion, whatever was left of it, would be reborn in fire. "Make contact with any remaining war fleets," he ordered. "We will gather whatever strength we have left. The humans may have broken our chains, but we are not finished." Yelks hesitated. "And if the humans return?" Vrotha's mandibles twitched. He had no doubt they would. But by then, the Dominion would not be this weak, crippled thing. By then, they would be something new. He turned to the viewport, staring into the dark void beyond. The humans had left a wound so deep it could never be ignored, a scar that would shape the future of his people. He did not know what that future would be, but he knew this. The Dominion was not dead yet, and if the humans returned, they would not find the same enemy twice. The fires of the Dominion's collapse burned across the stars. Vroth watched from the command bridge as the final transmissions came in, reports from distant worlds, fragmented and desperate. Some planets had declared independence, their people no longer bound by the Dominion's iron grip. Others had fallen into chaos, warlords carving up territories, fighting for scraps of what once was. And the humans, they had vanished into the void. Not a single ship remained in Dominion space. Not a single demand had been made. They had come, unmade everything, and left without a word. It was not mercy. It was something far worse. They had given the Dominion exactly what it had always feared: choice. Vrotha's claws tapped against the metal of his command chair. The weight of his own words still hung in the air. Civil war is coming. He had no illusions about what that meant. The Dominion had always been ruled by absolute control, by the will of a single, unyielding force. Without it, there would be bloodshed on a scale that even the humans could not have imagined. And yet, some part of him, a small, treacherous part, wondered if this was always how it was meant to be. For the first time, Dominion officers questioned. Soldiers hesitated before killing. Entire fleets refused to obey orders without reason. It was unnatural. And yet it was right. The truth burned Vroth more than any weapon ever could. The humans had done what no enemy had ever managed. They had struck at the very soul of the Dominion, at the idea that control was the only path to strength, and they had proven it wrong. His mandibles clicked in irritation. He hated the thought, but he could not ignore it. The Dominion had been rotting long before the humans came. The wars, the constant expansion, the endless struggle for power, it had been leading to this moment for centuries. The humans had simply accelerated the inevitable. The command was quiet now. His officers, those who had not deserted or collapsed under the weight of their own thoughts, stood ready, not waiting for orders, not waiting for control, waiting for purpose. Vroth exhaled slowly. He had been born in the Dominion's golden age, raised in its doctrine, trained to be its sword. He had believed with every fiber of his being that power was absolute, that the strong ruled and the weak obeyed. But what happened when the weak were no longer afraid? His grip tightened around the armrest of his chair. He still did not understand the humans, their technology, their strategy, their beliefs. But one thing was clear. They had given the Dominion a choice. It could die as the Empire it once was, or it could become something else, something that could stand against them. He straightened, his voice calm but firm. Prepare the fleet. We leave for the core systems. Yeltrix turned to him, confused. Admiral? Vroth stared at the screens, at the chaos spreading across what had once been his empire. The Dominion as we knew it is dead, he admitted. But its people live. And so long as they live, they will look for someone strong enough to lead them. He turned, mandibles clicking together. His voice was steel. We will not let the humans decide our fate. We will rebuild. We will evolve. And the next time they come, they will not find a broken empire. The fires of the Dominion's collapse burned across the stars. Vroth watched from the command bridge as the final transmissions came in. Reports from distant worlds, fragmented and desperate. Some planets had declared independence. Their people no longer bound by the Dominion's iron grip. Others have fallen into chaos. Warlords carving up territories, fighting for scraps of what once was. And the humans, they had vanished into the void. Not a single ship remained in Dominion space. Not a single demand had been made. They had come, unmade everything, and left without a word. It was not mercy. It was something far worse. They had given the Dominion exactly what it had always feared: choice. Vrotha's claws tapped against the metal of his command chair. The weight of his own words still hung in the air. Civil war is coming. He had no illusions about what that meant. The Dominion had always been ruled by absolute control, by the will of a single, unyielding force. Without it, there would be bloodshed on a scale that even the humans could not have imagined. And yet, some part of him, a small, treacherous part, wondered if this was always how it was meant to be. For the first time, Dominion officers questioned. Soldiers hesitated before killing. Entire fleets refused to obey orders without reason. It was unnatural. And yet it was right. The truth burned Vroth more than any weapon ever could. The humans had done what no enemy had ever managed. They had struck at the very soul of the Dominion, at the idea that control was the only path to strength, and they had proven it wrong. His mandibles clicked in irritation. He hated the thought, but he could not ignore it. The Dominion had been rotting long before the humans came. The wars, the constant expansion, the endless struggle for power, it had been leading to this moment for centuries. The humans had simply accelerated the inevitable. The command was quiet now. His officers, those who had not deserted or collapsed under the weight of their own thoughts, stood ready, not waiting for orders, not waiting for control, waiting for purpose. Roth exhaled slowly. He had been born in the Dominion's golden age, raised in its doctrine, trained to be its sword. He had believed with every fiber of his being that power was absolute, that the strong ruled and the weak obeyed. But what happened when the weak were no longer afraid? His grip tightened around the armrest of his chair. He still did not understand the humans, their technology, their strategy, their beliefs. But one thing was clear. They had given the Dominion a choice. It could die as the Empire it once was, or it could become something else, something that could stand against them. He straightened, his voice calm but firm. "Prepare the fleet. We leave for the core systems." Yeltrix turned to him, confused. "Admiral?" Roth stared at the screens, at the chaos spreading across what had once been his empire. "The Dominion as we knew it is dead," he admitted. "But its people live. And so long as they live, they will look for someone strong enough to lead them." He turned, mandibles clicking together. His voice was steel. "We will not let the humans decide our fate. We will rebuild. We will evolve. And the next time they come, they will not find a broken empire. They will find a worthy adversary." 3 days later, the remnants of Rotha's fleet approached Zifrin Prime, the jewel of the Dominion's core systems. What they found shook even the most hardened officers to their core. The once magnificent orbital defenses hung in fragments, tore apart not by human weapons, but by Dominion vessels fighting amongst themselves. The grand cities below, once symbols of the Empire's overwhelming might, now burned with insurrection, and at the center of it all, hovering in perfect stillness above the Imperial Palace, was a single human vessel, not the Revenant, but something else, smaller, sleeker, its hull reflecting the burning world beneath it like a dark mirror. Rotha's blood ran cold. "They're still here." His communications officer's voice trembled. "Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. It's coming from the palace." The view screen flickered to life, and Vrotha's heart nearly stopped. The Imperial throne room, the sacred center of Dominion power, was in ruins. The massive golden throne that had symbolized absolute authority for centuries lay toppled and broken. And standing amid the debris was a human leader, their helmet finally removed. The face staring back at them was not what any of them had expected. Not a hardened warrior, not a cruel conqueror, but a young woman with dark eyes that held no malice, only purpose. Her expression was calm, almost compassionate. "Admiral Vroth," she said, her voice as measured as it had been on his bridge. "I wondered if you would come." Vrotha's mandibles twitched with rage. "You have destroyed everything." The human shook her head. "No, we expose the truth. Your empire was destroying itself long before we arrived." She gestured to the chaos around her. "The neural implants, the mental conditioning, the genetic alterations to make your people more compliant. Did you think that was strength? It was fear, Admiral. Your leaders were so afraid of their own people that they rewrote their very minds." Roth snarled, but the words struck deeper than he wanted to admit. The Dominion's control had always been absolute, but he had never questioned how. He had never asked why his soldiers followed suicidal orders without hesitation, why rebellions were so rare despite the Empire's brutality. Because asking would have been treason. The human stepped forward, her movement fluid and graceful even amid the ruins. "We didn't come here to destroy you, Admiral. We came to free you." Vrotha's claws dug into his palms, drawing blood. "And what gives you the right? Who are you to decide our fate?" For the first time, something like sadness crossed the human's face. "We are what you could have been." The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. She continued, her voice softer now. 50 years ago, the Dominion visited Earth. Your scouts observed us, studied us, and left. Do you know what they reported back? Roth hesitated. He knew nothing of any Earth expedition. They said we were primitive, divided, weak. Her eyes hardened. They said we would destroy ourselves before we ever reached the stars. A cold realization dawned on Roth. The archives, the classified missions. The human nodded. Your leader saw potential in humanity, not as equals, but as slaves. They planted seeds, Admiral. Dormant technologies designed to activate once we reached a certain technological threshold. Neural networks meant to bind us to the Dominions will, just like your own people. Horror spread through Roth's body. The Dominion had done this before. Seeded world with technology, waited for the natives to advance enough to use it, then enslaved them through their own discoveries. But something went wrong, she continued. The technology you left behind, we understood it too well. We didn't just use it, we unmade it, rebuilt it, saw its purpose and refused it. She stepped closer to the screen, her eyes intense. And in doing so, we saw you, all of you, an empire of brilliant minds enslaved by their own leaders, bound to a will that was never truly their own. Roth's breathing grew ragged. And so you came to, what? Save us. The human's expression hardened. We came to give you a choice, Admiral. The same choice we had. Behind her, the palace shuddered. Explosions echoed in the distance. The revolt was spreading. Your emperor is gone, she said simply, along with the neural command structure that bound your people. What happens next is up to you. Roth stared at her, centuries of indoctrination warring with a new emptiness in his mind. And if we rebuild the Dominion, if we come for Earth, for the first time, something dangerous flickered in her eyes. Then we will be waiting, and you have seen only a fraction of what we can do. The transmission cut suddenly as another explosion rocked the palace. The view screen went dark, leaving Roth and his officers in stunned silence. Minutes passed before Yeltrick spoke. Admiral, your orders? Roth stared at the burning world below. The Dominion was fracturing, worlds declaring independence, fleets turning on their masters, ordinary citizens rising up against centuries of oppression. And yet, amid the chaos, he saw something else. Potential. A chance to build something new from the ashes of the old. The humans had not conquered them. They had not destroyed them. They had simply removed the chains and stepped back to watch what would happen next. It was the cruelest mercy and the greatest gift imaginable. Roth straightened his back, a decision crystallizing in his mind. Send word to all remaining loyal forces, he commanded. Tell them the Dominion, as it was, is finished. His officers stared at him in shock. But we will not let chaos reign, he continued, his voice growing stronger. We will not become savages fighting over scraps. We will build something new, something stronger, not through control, but through choice. He turned to face his crew fully, seeing them not as subordinates, but as equals for the first time. The humans believed we could be more than what we were. Let us prove them right. And as his words echoed across the command bridge, something shifted in the air, a weight lifting, a possibility forming. For the first time in his life, Admiral Roth was not following orders. He was choosing, and across the stars, watching from the shadows, humanity waited to see what would emerge in the ashes of an empire, not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as witnesses to the birth of something new. The war had ended before it truly began. But the real battle, the battle for the soul of a civilization, was just beginning, and it would change the galaxy forever.